we're going to do A, B, and C, as opposed to saying, all right, we're going to do A, but maybe we're going to do A over here, and maybe with a little less fanfare. And if we are working on the economy, we're going to spend more time emphasizing that. But I just think this idea that it was a communications failure is kind of condescending to the American people.
Can you frame it as not a failure to communicate, but a failure to convince? I mean, there wasn't a shortage of quantity of communications. Right. You're absolutely right. This president has done more interviews, and his top people have been everywhere and surrogates everywhere. But they didn't convince people, particularly swing voters and independents, that their policies were right or working. So it wasn't a quantity of communication. For some reason, Peter's going to explain why.
Well, I'm not sure.
Why didn't that quantity of communication work?
Very important distinction. And I have to admit, I agree to a certain extent with Karen. I mean, I think that there was this movement on the part of some of the press to say, oh, it's a communications problem. And so and this is Ann's point. Look, everybody's always searching for the silver bullet, the one thing. Why is he in such tough shape? Why was this created and what he could have done? But here's the thing that seems to me to be at the core of this. If the President of the United States came in on January 20th and he said, oh my God, we're losing 700,000 jobs a month, this economy is tanking, we're going to hell in a handbasket, I inherited this disaster, what's the reaction of the American people? I mean, you have got to be somewhat careful in how you talk about the problems that you're coming up against. So that's the first point. And I think he was trying to, in a sense, a little bit tamper down things, saying, okay, look, we're going to get better. Things are going to improve. Ronald Reagan, in that period that John's talking about, unemployment in this country was 10.6%. It was over 10% for 10 months when his numbers were below where Barack Obama's are right now. And one of the things we have to be careful of is not to lose sight of similar kinds of circumstances. I would like to see us go roaring out of this recession as fast as we did with Reagan. The other point, though, that I'll make about this, which I think is somewhat important, is that the solutions that, starting with the TARP program with Bush, moving on to saving the auto industry, and as some folks know, I worked a bit with General Motors during this period. He made a lot of decisions that he knew people weren't going to like. I mean, who likes bailouts? Who likes giving AIG $170 billion? Nobody likes it. But in order to put the tourniquet on the bleeding, he had to do it. And then you cannot go to the American people, as Jim says, and we're going to campaign on what if. We're going to campaign on what if I didn't do this? What would have happened to you? What would have happened to the country? Well, that's absurd. You can't do it. The one thing people say is, at least Franklin Roosevelt started from the bottom. I mean, he was able to give some hope and move folks up. The argument would be that Barack Obama's policies, and we could debate this, but I think this is part of the perception situation, prevented us from going to the bottom. So that's, that would be sort of my analysis of both the substance and the politics of the thing.
A couple of observations. There was no shortage of presidential communication, but I think Ann and I would agree. If you covered the Obama White House, you wanted to see the president a lot more than you did, and you wanted to ask him questions a lot more frequently than you were allowed to. And I think the American public over time accumulated that sense of anxiety that they simply were not hearing the president deal on an ongoing basis with rough and tumble questions about the circumstances of the country. Everything was either in one-on-one interviews, which tend, having participated in them myself, they tend to really empower the president. The president owns the room. Okay, Jim, you know this. Senators own the room when it's one-on-one. When it's 15 or 20 competitive, hyena-like reporters, presidents, senators can tend to control the room much less. That's just a simple observation. I think the president would have been well served to get out from behind the desk and mix it up with reporters on an almost daily basis because there was so much happening and he needed to weigh in. But that's one observation on communications. On the economy, look, nobody forced the President of the United States and his advisors to stand behind an economic projection that said if the stimulus is passed, unemployment in this country will never rise above 8%. Nobody. The president was not cautious enough. He used a simple mathematical modeling formula, and he talked about this just a month ago in an interview. Well, the modeling was wrong. That's what America gets? After 2 years, oh, so the modeling was wrong. No, I'm sorry, Mr. President. You have to explain initially, this is what we're going to try. This is what the statistics indicate, but we're in a tough spot. And I'm not going to tell you, as he did and as Robert Gibbs did in innumerable White House briefings, hey, we passed the stimulus, 8%, it's not going to get any worse than 8%. Well, when people see it's moving past 9, 10%, they're like, wait a minute. So these legitimate policy observations that jobs were saved, some were created, GDP was added to, they all fly away. They don't exist. And there's one person responsible for that message, and that's the President of the United States. One other thing. When Ronald Reagan was president in 1982, and the economy was as bad as Peter pointed out, John remembers this, Republicans lost 26 seats. Democrats lost 63 seats, possibly 64. You cannot downplay the magnitude of the reaction against the policies of the past 2 years. When you lose 63 seats, when your polling numbers, personally, your performance numbers are better than Reagan's were in the midterms in '82, there's a huge disconnect. And the Tea Party is part of that disconnect. And everyone here who's experienced in politics knows most Americans, when it comes to politics, are generally month to month to month sedentary beings. The Tea Party is an example of Americans getting out of that sedentary posture and creating their own events, their own candidates, their own grassroots effort. And that's why, in this cycle, unlike '94, where Democrats did not see the wave coming and did not plan for it and did not spend a lot of money, let me give you two races. Missouri's 4th Congressional District, Ike Skelton, beloved 17-term chairman of the Armed Services Committee. The Democratic Congressional Committee in independent expenditures before that election spent almost $500,000. Adding on to what Ike Skelton had spent already for his reelection, he got clobbered. Frank Cradaville in Maryland's 1st Congressional District. He had just been elected in 2008, running in a rural district, but generally speaking, okay. The DCCC also spent almost $500,000 in addition to what Cradaville spent. He got crushed. Democrats were up and prepared for a tough cycle. They warned their long-serving incumbents like Ike Skelton, hire a campaign manager early, raise money, get out there and campaign. He did exactly what he was told to, and he still got crushed. Frank Cradaville, who came in the wave in 2008, got all the institutional support he could get from the party, raised a ton of money himself, he still got crushed. Something really big happened in this midterm that we haven't seen before.
I appreciate all the data Major is providing. I want to challenge one piece of data. Republicans lost 26 seats in the '82 midterm. They started with only 192. So they finished with 166. The baseline was very different. Democrats started from 256, lost 63, and then it won 93. There's actually still 27 more Democrats in the House now than there were for Reagan's midterm. I just want to note that historical baseline. Look, New Coke had a great advertising program. The Edsel had a great advertising plan. The advertising was not the problem. This is not Cool Hand Luke, a failure to communicate. This is network. People are mad as hell. This is not a communications. It is disrespectful to this president, who got 66 million votes, who ran a magnificent campaign, to suggest that somehow he forgot how to communicate. I used to keep a list in my office, I think I still have it somewhere, of people who won Coach of the Year in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, or Major League Baseball, and were fired within 3 years. They didn't get stupid suddenly. John Wooden used to say, what coaches are you afraid of the most? Is the ones with the best players. You know, they didn't forget how to coach. The players got worse, or the players got old. Something went wrong. The president didn't forget how to communicate. The party that went to the voters as the party of Obama, Reid, and Pelosi got shellacked. Their response to that has been to return to the voters as the party of Obama, Reid, and Pelosi. Here, I made something for you. Do you like it? No. Yes, you do. Try it again. I don't like it. You're stupid. That's not a communications problem. That's a substance problem.
That was pretty skillful working two movie references into that answer. Very good, David.
Actually, David is the first one in, 45 minutes who mentioned the other person who I think bears a lot of responsibility, and that's Nancy Pelosi, and believe it or not, she got rehired by our team, which is the best bit of news for the Republican Party. I think the arrogance of Pelosi's leadership really hindered